Welcome to the Mana Drain. This is episode 43. I am Mox Born Again. We are all talking Magic the Gathering today. We got a whole bunch of news and discussions to get into. Like I said, I'm your host, Mox Born Again. We've got, let's see here, looks like we're streaming up on Twitch. We're good to go there. We've got Facebook Live going, and then we also have Mixer in there as well. So if you guys are on one of those three streaming sites, feel free to jump in and comment and join in the conversation. We'll get to as many of your posts as possible. But yeah, we'll just keep the conversation moving, and really do appreciate you guys watching live. While we get things rolling in here, we do want to invite you to go over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/72DPI online. Get subscribed, leave us a comment, share the videos. There's a whole bunch of different content videos up there right now. Everything from Magic the Gathering to tabletop board game reviews. We've got a video game and TV show podcast called Ball and Chain Podcast that everyone seems to enjoy. And then as far as Magic the Gathering goes, we've got our pre-release videos and our pre-release guide and things like that. We'll actually be recording one here tonight, that will probably go up tomorrow, since they decided to drop about 50 cards on us all at once for the upcoming set Battlebond, which we will be talking about today. Let's see, we've also got the Guilds of Ravnica and the Ravnica Allegiances set coming up that was spoiled, or not spoiled, I guess was announced this past weekend. So a whole bunch of a lot of cool stuff to talk about. There was a article that was written on the main website on magicthegathering.com about their card stock, and kind of really broke down how the cards are made, how they've been made since 1993. We're going to kind of dive into that article a little bit, especially since there hasn't been a lot of talk about it. Well, there's been a lot of talk on the one side about cards bending. I don't know if that one's not too bad. I don't know if I've got any actual bent cards right at hand, but the cards bending and the foiling process and things like that. So we're going to talk all about that stuff and kind of highlight some of that, the article there. So really appreciate you guys watching. Let's take a look here. So there was an announcement, I believe it was Friday. It was after we recorded the last episode, where they announced a whole bunch of new stuff, a bunch of new product and things like that, new sets coming out, and kind of wanted to hit off with that. The first thing I want to do is let's go ahead and jump over here, and we're not going to play their video because this is a multi-billion-dollar company, and you could tell by the results down here. 1K liked it, 2.2 disliked it. Now, if you can read the comments, actually that's pretty far off screen. So anyway, the comments aren't very flattering. It's not a great video. Essentially, we'll fast forward here, right here. So this is the setup. So, These three people right here are all part of Wizards employees, right? And they're all Wizards employees. They're part of the design, they're part of development, and they're part of the art direction and things like that. These two are podcasters from Magic the Amateuring, which is another podcast. They're a little more laid back, but they do an interview kind of kicking this announcement week off. And it's extremely casual, but it gets very cringe very quickly, and by that I mean the jokes are very poorly written. It's a very scripted conversation. You've got the attire that some of them are wearing is is not conducive of a professional interview. It's just not what you would think when you'd see a $1 billion company putting out, basically talking to their customers saying, hey, these are the products that you're going to be purchasing. These are what you're going to be spending your money on. This is what we've been working on, and this is how we're going to present to you. And the video was just god-awful. To be honest with you, it would have been, in my opinion, if we just had the three Wizards employees, the designers, the artists, and the developers on camera being, interviewed in front of the camera, one-on-one or whatever, with no actual interviewer, just the interviewee, and they're just answering questions. I mean, that's really all they're doing here. Like, the podcasters on the right are just setting up terrible jokes. It's a very scripted interview. Clearly they had figured out exactly what they wanted to say, and they wanted to release certain bits of information. Like, why not just let the designers do that? I understand they want to interact with the community more, but in my opinion, this just does nothing but damage the actual product itself and the company itself. It leaves the consumers wanting a lot more and choosing to spend their money elsewhere. For a lot of people, you'll read in the comments, like, this was the straw that broke the camel's back, and this is kind of what they're thinking as, well, I'm just going to go ahead and spend my money elsewhere. Like, clearly you guys aren't interested in, your fans. You're not paying attention to what, your fans are requesting. You're just kind of going off and doing your own thing. And, for some of that, it's true, as a designer, as a game developer and things like that, you want to make games that you want to play. But when you are like bending the knee to certain demographics and certain groups and things like that, just for the sake of inclusion, and you're separating out your not even your target audience, your main audience, 98% of your main audience is being neglected to shoehorn in these other 1%, half of a percent of audiences. That's just bad business model. And we hear time and time again how Magic is thriving and Magic is it's not dying, and well, that's not what the quarterly reports came out a couple weeks ago. That's not what they're saying. And so anyway, let's get into some of the content for this actual announcement. And they actually put out an article outlining the mechanics of Battlebond. So we'll talk about let's talk about the Ravnica cards first. How about that? So Ravnica was announced. This is the set that is going to be coming out later this year. We're going to be having two sets. We're going to have Ravnica City of Guilds, or excuse me, Guilds of Ravnica, backwards there, and then Ravnica Allegiance is going to be the beginning of next year. So the whole premise of these two sets, actually there's going to be a third one they did not announce. The three sets are going to be based around Ravnica, the City of Guilds. So this is the third time that we've been back to this city, or back to this plane. The actual sets that were prior to this, that were on this plane, were very well received. The original Ravnica is probably definitely in the top three as far as planes are concerned. As far as actual sets produced, it's probably definitely in the top five overall. Return to Ravnica, had a thriving standard format. Added a few cards here and there as far as modern is concerned. There was a lot of high value cards in there. Anything from the planeswalkers to different mythic creatures. Then you had the shock lands. There was a lot of value in that set. So the way, this is the same thing this is going to be the same formatting for these two sets. Is the first set's going to have 5 guilds. You're going to have the Selesnya, you're going to have Boros, Golgari, Izzet, and Damir. Those 5 guilds, they're each 2-color pair, so green-white, red-white, black-green, blue-red, and blue-black is what the 5-color sets are going to be in there. And then Allegiances is going to have Azorius, Rakdos, Gruul, Simic, and Orzhov. So those are the white-blue, red-black, red-green, blue-green, and white-black guilds. And this is just, again, a proven formula that can win them money, without a doubt. So I don't see a loss here unless we venture too far off the reservation. as far as the story is concerned, apparently there's going to be a significant story element for the Gatewatch in that second set in the Ravnica Allegiances, and then the final chapter with Nicol Bolas as the bad guy, the enemy, is going to come to a final end in that third Ravnica set. They didn't announce what the third Ravnica set was. They just have said that the story for the Gatewatch will end. Now, whether that means they'll be destroyed or whether they'll be victorious or will, fight to see another day or whatever the case may be, there is a story element there that has not been told yet. We're kind of left in the dark a little bit, which is fine because quite frankly we're not even there yet. So I'm excited that we're going back to Ravnica. Don't get me wrong, I am excited about that because we've got Ravnica was one of the sets that that my wife and I returned to and my wife played for the first time. I think we actually played Innistrad first, so we kind of rolled into Return to Ravnica. But at any rate, the set, the actual feel of the set and it's very welcoming. A couple different guilds to pick from or whatever. It's always a lot of fun to see the different types of cards. So the only downfall with Ravnica sets is they're so on the rails that it's hard to veer, right? So like when you're in when you're drafting the set or when you're opening up your sealed product, if you open up majority of red white, you're going to play Boros and you're not going to kind of venture off the path. Very rarely will you play a 3-color deck in these Ravnica sets just because it doesn't pay off very well. Most of the actual crossover between the cards is non-existent, or between the actually guilds. So like for example, if you take the red-white Boros clan, right, and let's say you opened up a few awesome Selesnya cards, that's the green-white clan, right, you would very rarely, unless there is something like huge in that green pile, you're not going to splash green in your red-white deck. You're just going to play full ball Boros and go for the win, right? Play good red-white spells and mediocre white-red spells over good green spells. You're not going to splash that third color. So it'd be interesting to see if they have that kind of crossover. So I'm kind of curious. So we'll see. Let's see here. So the other thing that they announced during this little tidbit here is there's going to be guild packs or guild kits available. There's 60 card decks featuring all the different guilds. So you'll be able to purchase the 5 guilds from the Guilds of Ravnica set on November 2nd, and then the Allegiances guild kits on February in 2019. These haven't sold well in the past, and I'm kind of reluctant to actually go into a store and purchase these, only because they're typically terrible decks. They're pre-constructed decks that that Wizards has put together thinking for the casual player, not necessarily. And when I say casual, I mean kitchen table casual. These decks have never been good to play in like a Friday Night Magic setting. Only rarely with the Challenger decks have they actually kind of cracked that code and released a product that's actually A, worth it to purchase, B, competitive enough to even play on a Friday Night Magic table, and C, decks that people want to play. They're not these shoehorn decks that highlight a mechanic that they're looking to do, which I think is probably what these guild kits are going to do. They're basically going to highlight each of the guild's special abilities. So like each guild has its own ability, and it's specific to that guild, right? So the Boros or the Izzet guild pack or guild kit is only going to have the Izzet keyword, and they're going to shoehorn every card in the set into that 60-card deck. A, because there's not going to be enough cards between 5 guilds to build a 60-card deck out of 2 colors, or excuse me, out of 3 colors, and they have to be able to highlight each one of those. So Is it going to be a good product? Probably not. Is it going to be overpriced? Most likely. Should you buy it? Probably not. But we'll reserve judgment until we see the deck list, until we see the actual cards and the mechanics for each of those. As far as the art direction goes, they talked a little bit about that. Basically, the last time we were at Ravnica, it was like kind of like a springtime or whatever, and now it's apparently going to be fall. So there's going to be wet streets and leaves on the ground and very fall-esque, very autumn-esque. So it's yeah, I'm not really too concerned with the art. I usually have I'm not too picky when it comes to the art of Magic. We'll get into that in just a second with our second topic. So at the end of the day, going back to Ravnica, good idea. It's definitely a money grab because they know Ravnica is one of the most sought after sets. One of the most coveted sets, Planes of Magic. So of course they're going to go back to it. We just didn't realize we were going to go back to it too soon. Especially and I said this on Twitter the other day, I can't believe we left Dominaria so soon, and we're going back to Ravnica, and they announced 3 sets for Ravnica, and I was like, man, the nostalgia with not Dominion, Dominaria is massive. Like the first set was amazing. I wish we were staying here longer. Why can't we have more sets here? This is, a set that I enjoy. It's a set that my son enjoys. It seems like everybody, the general consensus online is, with the few fringe negative people out there, is fairly good. And it's unfortunate that we don't get to experience more of this. And it's not to say that we won't go back to Dominaria. And I think this is one of the key points that a lot of people are missing is they changed the setup of how the sets are released, right? So originally it was, we're going to do a big set, small set, big set, small set. Big sets are three releases, small sets are 2 releases, in that fashion. And what they're running into is they, trying to tell a story and make a card game at the same time was proven to be very difficult, keeping that balance, keeping the game engaging and keeping the story, thriving. So they changed it to where they can free, willy-nilly go from one plane to the next and spend however long they want on each one. So there's no telling that we could possibly go back to Dominaria after Return to Ravnica. As far as the history of Magic, there's never been that quick of a turnaround. But from a story element of Magic, being able to start a story here, take a right onto this plane a little bit, and then to go back to another one, for a story element that wouldn't be out of the question. I think there would be a little bit of pushback from the fans as far as, oh my God, we're going back to Dominaria already. And they'd have to be, as far as their messaging is concerned, they'd have to be 100% on point with that, stating that, we're going back to Dominaria because we want to tell a story, and there's some untold stories that are left there that we want to revisit and things like that. So, maybe something happens where Bolas, destroys certain planes or whatever, or changes certain planes and things of that nature. And that's kind of where I put my speculation hat on. And, I think it was Judgment that had the prominently black set where 75% of the Magic cards were black and the rest of them were the other 4 colors. And I'm like, man, it would be awesome. And I even quoted Ravnica as one of the cool sets where it would be great if we had these the guild leaders or the guild people from each of these different guilds. Where did the banished or where did the suspended people go that don't kind of line up with Boros, right? They or don't line up with Golgari or don't line up with Izzet or do something out of the ordinary and they get banished from the guild. Where do those people go? And I kind of was thinking, well, what if there was an underground guild or something like that, kind of took in everybody, and you had these Izzet creatures and Izzet mages that were red-blue for sure, but also had just a shade of black, right? So you could bend the color pie a little bit and really tell that really sweet story where the heroes of the story were these underground forgotten guild members or banished guild members or forsaken guild members, however you want to say it. So like kind of like an 11th guild, and maybe they were led by a couple planeswalkers or whatever, and this is like the next story that kind of culminates after the Gatewatch. That's just me kind of like free thinking off the top of my head, but I'm thinking like that would be a lot of fun to kind of see like a really dark, and we've seen it before what Bolas can do, and there's some really dark magic that he has access to, so it's not far-fetched for him to kind of like wave his hand and boom, like we've got like this huge change in like demeanor and like huge change in like a feel, and weather's changed, and just all around just a complete shift in the color pie from this Dragon Lord. So at the end of the day, I'm excited to go back to Ravnica, but I would have liked to spend more time on Dominaria. So yeah, take it for what it's worth. Are you guys excited about going back to Ravnica? I kind of want to hear in the comments below in chat. Let me know if you guys are excited about going back to Ravnica. Is it too soon? Is it not soon enough? When have you played did you play in the original or in the Return to Ravnica? Kind of want to hear about it in the comments below. All right, so what else? Is there anything else that I missed with Return? No, there's not. Okay. So moving on. So the next thing that I want to talk about is Battlebond. So we got in the announcement trailer Friday, the terrible, cringe-worthy one. We got basically a reveal of the new two new cards for the set. This set comes out later in June, I believe, beginning of June, which is right around the corner. Holy cow, is it really right around? It is. Holy smokes. So the cards that they revealed were Pure Imaginative Rascal and Toothy Imaginary Friend. So Pure is a 1/1 for 1 green and 2 generic. It's a legendary creature human at rare. It has a new ability called Partner With, and then it names Toothy the Imaginary Friend. So what that basically means is when this creature enters the battlefield, target player may put Toothy into their hand from their library and then shuffle. So it gives you a tutor effect, and the same thing happens if like your partner has Toothy. They can play Toothy and then target you, who has the Rascal. You can search for the Rascal, put it into your hand. You don't get to put it in play; you put it in your hand. So that's kind of like the new pair with mechanic. You can only pair with the named card, so it's not like the pair from the command. Is it Commander? I think it's Commander. Or the partner with the partner mechanic from the Commander set. So you can't, break the two pair up. So basically they're meant to work together. So for those of you, I probably should have mentioned this sooner. So for those of you that don't know, the Battleborn set is kind of a supplementary product that Wizards is releasing for kind of like a I would call it a fringe format. It's not a very popular format, but for those that play it, it is very beloved. It's very near and dear to their hearts. Called Two-Headed Giant, and basically it's where you and a partner play a game of Magic against another two players. You have the same life total, you take the same turn at the same time, you attack together, you defend together, you cast your spells together, things like that. There's only a few different variations. You each start at 30 life, you share your life total, you can block for each other, you can do things like that. They're bending some of the rules with some of the new cards and new mechanics, and we'll get to that in just a second. But going back to these two cards that were spoiled during this announcement on Friday, so going back to Pierre, his ability, so he's a 1/1, so he says if one or more counters would be put onto a permanent your team controls, so that's new wording, not yours, your team, so you or your partner, we're going to be seeing a lot of this. That many +1 of each of those kinds of counters are put on the permanent instead. Whew, that's a mouthful. So you still with me? So if you give a creature a +1/+1 counter and you've got Peer out, you're actually putting two +1/+1 counters. And this goes for your partner as well. So if they put a +1/+1 counter, on a creature. If you've got Peer out, then you get 2. So that's interesting. The other card that was released is Toothy, the Imaginary Friend. It's 3 generic, 1 blue for a legendary creature illusion. It's a 1/1. Whenever you draw a card, you put a +1/+1 counter on Toothy, Imaginary Friend. That's funny how that works. So if you have Peer out and you draw a card with Toothy out, you're not just putting 1 counter on, you're putting 2 counters on for each card that you draw. Then it also has another ability. When Toothy leaves the battlefield, draw a card for each +1/+1 counter on it. So let's say you just put this out into play on turn 4, and then you pass the turn 5, you draw your card, you immediately put 2 counters on it, and let's say they destroy the creature or you attack it and they have a combat trick and your creature gets destroyed. So now you're drawing 2 cards after the creature leaves the battlefield because of those 2 counters. So there's some really interesting synergies there. It's unfortunate that they're 1/1s for such large costs. However, there is some interesting interaction with Toothy because it says, and it specifically says when it leaves the battlefield. So this will play well with white flicker effects. And there are also blue bounce spells that you have that are available that you'll gain access to. The only downside to this is you're going to be losing those +1/+1 cards. So at the end of the day, drawing extra cards and putting your 1/1 back into play to be restacked isn't necessarily a bad option. There's plenty of Boomerang is a perfect example from old school Magic that allows you to return a creature to its owner's hand. So basically pay 1 mana, bounce this creature back to your hand, and now you're drawing, cards equal to the +1/+1 counters. Turn around, play Toothy again, and just ramp up again. So it's going to be an interesting combination mechanics-wise. So the pushback for this set was the artwork. And you can see right here, here is a Pure Imaginative Rascal, kind of a little bit larger for you guys. The artwork is leaving a lot to be desired. It's unfortunate because for me personally, this 2-headed giant format is something that I use to play with my son Eli, who's 7 years old, who he loves the game of Magic, right? He's really big into the creatures, and he really likes the big creatures with the high attack and high defense, much like any other Magic player did when they first started playing Magic. Like, oh my god, that's a 7/7 worm, or that's an 8/8 Colossus, or what, that's a 7/7 Sliver Queen, or what, whatever the case may be. So they weren't really thinking about the mechanics and things like that. Now, my son Eli, I've kind of brought him up into the game a little bit quicker than I was brought up into the game. And when I showed him these cards, he's like, "Oh, that's really neat." And then he's like, "Well, it's 3 mana, and it's only a 1/1." And so I had to explain to him what it did. He's like, "Oh, that's okay, I guess." But he was really excited about Toothy because of drawing cards and putting +1/+1 counters, and it had the opportunity to get bigger. So he was more on board with Toothy versus the Rascal. And when I asked him about the artwork, he thought the artwork was okay. He didn't, I really didn't have much of a reply as to it's a new set, and it's based on our format that we play together. So he got all excited, and then when he saw the cards, it was kind of like, oh, well, that's you don't get the reaction out of them, which was kind of weird because I thought maybe since he likes Pokemon so much that this set with the artwork would kind of resonate with him. But he really wasn't. He thought Toothy was kind of neat because of the creature in the background, very Pokemon-esque. But he really didn't. He didn't really get excited like the dinosaur, the dinosaurs of Ixalan, or the cats over in Amonkhet, or the mummies and the zombies in Amonkhet in Kaladesh. So it was just interesting, from a perspective standpoint, to kind of see what his reaction was, because clearly this is the target audience that they're going for. Right, the game is for 13 plus, as far as the age range is concerned, but a lot of the dads of Magic bring in their sons early so they can kind of get a head start, so they're not starting at 13, that they're going into 13 with an understanding on how to play. So seeing this cater to that younger crowd and breaking away from traditional Magic artwork really is kind of disheartening. So they're still going to play it because of a couple of mechanics. There's a couple of mechanics that actually brought me back in, and I was really on the edge when they spoiled these 2 cards. I was like, ooh, that's not Magic. Like, that's, the if you take away the art boxes, we might be able to talk. Take away the name, the names, Toothy, like, that seems kind of childish to me. But anyway, at any rate, so let's get into the mechanics. So we already talked about partner with and how that's specific to the creatures. Now there's a couple different creature rarities that will have this. The other cool thing about the partner with ability is you will get both cards in one pack. So you won't just open up a Toothy and you won't have a peer with it. You will actually open up both rares in the same pack. So that's pretty cool. As far as I wonder what that will do for pricing for the 2. Because obviously if you're gonna have one, you're gonna have both. And if there's some that the partner with mechanic really doesn't matter, then obviously the better one will be worth more. So I thought that was an interesting turn of events to have the actual both the cards in one pack kind of thing. Okay, so then also we have assist is another mechanic, and this one is actually really cool for not only the commander players the two-headed giants players of the world, but also the commander players. So like they've illustrated here, Huddle Up, which is 2 generic, 1 blue. It's a sorcery. It has the assist ability, and then what it actually does is 2 target players each draw a card. So you target player A and yourself, or 2 other players, and they each draw a card for 3 mana. Doesn't sound really worth it, but with assist, it allows another player to pay for the colorless mana. And assist allow just the colorless mana. So if it's like 7 in 1 blue, you are responsible for paying the blue, and target player is responsible for paying up to 7 mana. So this will be interesting with like an X spell. I don't know if that will be like overpowered, because you can like, for instance, if I had 2 mana and you had 1, we could pay this together and cast the spell. So in Two-Headed Giant, it's you're using both mana pools, so it's kind of bridging that gap. One of the top questions when playing Two-Headed Giant at pre-release is, can I help my partner pay for their spells? And the answer is no. You have separate mana pools. Now with assists, that bends that rule to where you can pay for some of them, and you could pay for some of the colorless or all of it. It's up to you, but you can't pay for the colored portion of the spell. So they bend it a little bit, making it a little more confusing. But at the end of the day, I think it's a really cool mechanic, and it's great for playing together as a team. So, commander players will find this interesting because you can use this as kind of like a politics type of card, where like, okay, hey, I've got 3 mana, but if you fork over 2, I'll give you this extra card, and you can kind of build that bond or whatever with one of your opponents. So Huddle Up is kind of neat. Support is back. This was kind of a dud. I'm trying to remember, where was this from? I think this was from Battle for Zendikar, I think. But anyway, the creature has support followed up with a number, and when it enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 other target creatures. So, like for instance, this Expedition Raptor is 5 mana for a 2/2 flyer. God awful at common. Don't play it. Not worth it. I know it says flying. Don't play it. But it does say when it enters battlefield, support 2. So you can put a +1/+1 counter on 1 creature or on 2 creatures. You can't put them on the same creature. So it was a failed mechanic back then. It's interesting for two-headed giant, which I think it works better in, because you can target your your partner's creatures as well. So like if you have like, let's say one deck has like the support creatures and the other deck has like the finishers or whatever, or like the cards that want to benefit from the +1/+1 counters, then support gets a little bit better. But again, it's one of those mechanics that isn't as fruitful, I guess, just because it's on creatures that you generally cost too much to actually make it worth your while. Friend or foe is another mechanic. This is interesting for not only for two-headed giant, but again for commander, and a lot of these cards will be useful in commander. So Pierre's Whim is 3 generic, 1 green for a sorcery at rare. For each player, choose friend or foe. Each friend searches their library for a land card and puts it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffles their library. Each foe sacrifices an artifact or an enchantment they control. So this is pretty interesting. Obviously, for two-headed giant purposes, your two opponents are gonna, you're going, very rarely will you call them friend, and your partner will become a friend. So at the end of the day, being able to sacrifice artifacts, enchantments, it's not a really big deal. Being able to search up 2 lands, because it does say for each player, so you can choose yourself. So at the end of the day, it does give you a little bit of cushion as far as like ramping up from the next turn, while controlling some of the enchantments. And that's one of the other things that this set is probably going to have, is some pretty wicked enchantments, only because it's designed for two-headed giant, but there's also some spillover into commander, and commander is all about those enchantments, like those big splashy ones too. So that's the mechanics for Battlebond. I guess, before this, I was very on the edge of what the actual set was going to do for me personally, and I wasn't really sure that I wanted to take Eli to this, because to me it didn't feel like Magic, right? But I think with the assist mechanic, and the partner with mechanic, he'll like the friend or foe one. He really kind of digs that kind of interaction. So I think that those 3 mechanics are gonna they're gonna probably stabilize this whole like in my gut type of feeling that I don't want to go. So I'm not gonna say I'm looking forward to it, but the cards will speak for themselves. So speaking of the cards, we will have a review of the cards that were released recently. Today was the first day, and it looks like we have quite a few. Let's see here: 8, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 24. We've got 29 cards to kind of go over, and some of them are reprints, and some of them are brand new. So we'll put that together in a pre-recorded video for you guys and put that up on the YouTube channel. Make sure you check that out when it goes live, and then kind of like what we did for Dominarias, each day we'll release new cards. We'll put those together for you guys, and then at the end of it, we will put together a pre-release video, kind of outlining the best creatures, the best of instance and kill spells, the best artifact, kind of like the cards you want to play, versus the cards you don't want to play. So it got some pretty good reviews last time around, so we'll do it again for this one. So pretty excited about that. All right, so moving right along to our last and final topic, card stock. So there's been a lot of conversation lately and recently, the past probably about the past 2 or 3 years, like the card stock conversation just doesn't seem to go away. And one of the original issues with the problem, it seemed to only be with like the From the Vault series, where like you'd have like a card and it would be like out of the box, it would be like this, right? It would be super bent, and it wouldn't be like from side to side. It would almost be like corner to corner. It would be curling. And the problem with that is, the From the Vault series, that's one thing. Like that's a collector's edition. Collector's edition. Most people don't play with those cards because of quote unquote their value, at least some of their value. But the problem became more apparent with like Theros and Battle for Zendikar, and really kind of came into fruition with the Shadow over Innistrad, the Innistrad Return to Innistrad block, where cards were just curling out of the packs. And it wasn't necessarily the foils; it was just the regular cards. And everybody was, really quick to, was quick to jump to controversy because Wizards hasn't really been upfront with their printing process. There was no like specific. They would never, acknowledge the problem. There was no conversation or nothing like that. They were completely dead silent on this issue. And it wasn't just a few loud voices. It was a vast majority of people that were having these issues, to the point where people were making videos of, make sure when you open up a pack of cards, you've got a perfect fit and a dragon shield right next to you. So if you open up that, that $1,000 card, you can slip it in the perfect fit and slip it right into the dragon shield. And now you got a double sleeve card that's not exposed to the air, moisture of the outside world. And it's sad that that had to, it was coming to that. You can't enjoy the card, open up like, oh, look at that $80. I just bought a $4 pack of Magic and I opened up an $80 card, and all of a sudden it's just like, well, crap. Now it's not $80. Now it's worth $15 because this is considered damaged and not playable because it's a quote unquote marked card in tournament setting. So it loses its value like immediately. So recently on the basic, let's see, when was this? I think it was Thursday. Yeah, last Thursday. So after we went live last week, Tom Weinerstrand published an article about their card stock. And I was shocked. Like, no one's talking about this. Like, here we have, like, Wizards actually talking about how they create their cards and, like, the different layers and, like, the glue and the, the process and the lamination and the printing and the coating and the base coating. Like, they're talking about everything that we want to know about and the different, basically the history of printing Magic cards in this set it hasn't changed since 1993. Now, the material has changed slightly in the sense that the natural what do they call it? Where did he go? Oh crud! Cardstock. Basically the actual paper itself, they're basically saying that no two sheets are exactly the same, and it's impossible to get that because of the natural fibers, the natural pulp of the cardstock that they're using. Now, they've used the same mill over in France since 1993. They've used the same exact process since 1993. So what's changed? What's different? Basically what they're attributing the curling issue to is the natural pulp of the card themselves and not being able to control each sheet by itself. So what they've done is, and basically their solution right now that they've been testing over in Japan has become more of a certified pulp, so like kind of more like a manufactured type of material, I guess, so that they can control the inside of the card, so that it doesn't do the bending and the curling that we've been seeing recently with the subpar sets that have been coming out. So I'm all for them figuring out how to fix this issue, because while I don't have any cards that have this issue, there are people out there that do, and I'm not saying that I take care of my cards any different than anybody else does. But as soon as I open up a foil card that I know is worth some money, whether it be a planeswalker, or like they say right here, like a masterpiece or whatever, it immediately goes into a sleeve, into a second sleeve, and then it goes into my binder. Very rarely will I play with those. I think the only foil cards that I actually play with was back in Theros when I tried to foil. Strange time for me when I tried to foil my standard deck while it was still in standard. Spoiler alert, I didn't get a chance to foil it all because it was so damn expensive. So now I've got it's probably about 95% of the way done of a standard set from 4 years ago. But at the end of the rate, this will hopefully fix the issue that we're seeing with this curling issue. So it's interesting that they came out and addressed the issue. Well, I take that back. They didn't really address the issue because in here they don't admit any guilt. They don't say anything about, oh, well, we know your cards are bending and we know that you're losing value in the second market because no one wants to buy a bent card. But here's what we're trying to do to improve our card stock. So it's funny because they don't admit the issue, but they're recognizing that there's people out there talking about it. So what can we do to alleviate some of that conversation, which is hilarious because I don't remember any podcasters talking about this issue. Correct me if I'm wrong, link to their videos in the comments below. But the 5 or 6 podcasts that I listen to and shows I listen to, this was not on the radar. Which is unfortunate because it's a well put together article. It's very informative. It's kind of meeting the customer halfway, and it's a pressing issue without conceding the fact that there's a problem. But they're not only are they talking about the actual process, they've actually got a solution for the issue that they're not admitting to. And it's funny how they talk about that. That solution in this one paragraph. So definitely go to the website, check it out. It was published on the 17th, so you can find it. It's basically the title of the article is called "Playing Cardboard." It's a well put together article, and it's something that I'm looking forward to seeing more of as to what their plans are with this new manufactured type of approach. They did say at the end of the article that Battlebond will be the first set that sees this release worldwide this June. So we'll see what they make of it. We know that they tried another layer of some type of film or something on the Dominaria cards. It didn't seem to have any effect because I don't think, like this article mentions, I don't think it has anything to do with the outside of the card. I think it has to do with the actual paper itself. And if what they're saying is true, no two sheets are going to be consistent, right? So I think that's where you're seeing some cards are bending, some are not, some are bending worse than others, some are bending right out of the pack. So, it's interesting. We'll see. We'll see how it works. We'll see how it works out. I'm not going to hold my breath because air is important, but it's nice to get these types of tidbits from the mothership from time to time. So, all right, guys, I believe that is everything. It is. We made it to the end. Cheers. So, I really appreciate you guys watching. We went a little long. I apologize for that, but some really good topics to talk about. Make sure you leave comments below. Talk about the different sets that are coming up from Ravnica. What kind of guilds are you excited about? Are you a Selesnya player? Are you an Izzet player? What kind of cards and what kind of mechanics are you wanting to come back? Are you wanting all new mechanics for each of the guilds? Are you wanting returning mechanics for the guilds? Leave them in the comments below. And then, also I want to talk about the cardboard, right? I want to hear, are you seeing any difference with your Dominaria cards? Are you kind of excited that they're releasing this information about the cardboard that they're using and the advancements in the technology that they're using to improve our product? I want to hear about that stuff, guys. I really do. So make sure you leave in the comments below. Make sure you share and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/72DPI online. Again, I truly do appreciate the support. Thank you very much. Every share, every like, every comment makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside, and I appreciate it to the ends of the world. So thank you very much. We'll be back here next Monday with episode 44. So until then, guys, have a great night, and we'll see you then.